What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Kirsten Potenza, CEO and founder of Pound the Rockout Workout. You're listening to The Big Green Couch, where I sit down with noisemakers across various industries to discuss different topics, to bring new ideas, fresh perspectives, and practical tips to you, our community. Let's get started. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of The Big Green Couch. Today we have an incredible guest, Ellen Bennett. She is the founder and CEO of Hedley Bennett, the leading Los Angeles-based culinary workwear brand. Growing up, she found herself spending summers in her native Mexico learning to cook with her abuelita. And soon after graduating high school, Ellen found herself back in Mexico City attending culinary school, where she would rekindle the joys of her summer cooking adventures, all while learning the skills needed to tackle the hustle of the professional kitchen. Back in LA, she put her training to work cooking in 2 Michelin star restaurants, Providence and Baco Mercat. It was during this time, working on the line, that she experienced a uniform, quote unquote, a uniform, that was not aligned with the creativity and confidence found in the kitchen. This led to the vision for Hedley and Bennett: make the best aprons in the world by marrying the needs of professional chefs with the design trends for today's discerning consumers. Today, Hedley and Bennett make more than aprons, but culinary workwear and gear that outfits over 6,000 restaurants, hotels, coffee shops, resorts, and hundreds of thousands of home cooks all over the world. This evolution has also led to creative, out-of-the-box collaboration with brands such as Vans, Madewell, Parachute Home, Rifle Paper, Product, and many more. Most recently, she pivoted the resources of her company during the global COVID-19 pandemic to make masks to meet the needs of both professionals and consumers, while donating over 200,000 masks to frontline workers. Ellen and the Hedley and Bennett story has been featured in the New York Times, Fast Company Inc., Bon Appetit, Martha Stewart, and The Today Show. Ellen lives in Echo Park with her husband, Casey, their pet pig, Oliver, and 6 chickens. Welcome, Ellen, to the Big Green Couch. Ellen, good morning, and thank you for being with us today. I'm so excited to chat with you because I have followed you for a very long time. My husband is in the restaurant industry, and we used to live in Echo Park. Just such big fans of everything that you do, but also how you do it. It's very inspiring and always feels really fresh. So super stoked to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I'm going to start kind of in the middle today, and then we can go back to the beginning, and we'll end with present Ellen.
Okay.
So starting at the birth of your company, Hedley and Bennett, I'm about 60% through your book. Dream first, details later. I used to be much faster at reading books, but with baby in hand, it has become quite difficult.
I bet.
And speaking of baby, congratulations. I saw
Thank
that you
you.
announced. So exciting.
So excited.
It's
So
such
excited.
an incredible, exciting, just roller coaster of a journey. I'm really excited.
That definitely seems like the right appropriate word for it.
Yeah.
It's so much emotion in a good way, and then you're learning new things, and you're like, oh wow, I've never felt tired like that before. What am I gonna do?
It's it's funny. It felt to me very similar to the beginning of my company, where you just jump right into it, and every day is a roller coaster, and you're experiencing brand new things, and you just kind of learn it as you go. And there's really nothing better than that. And speaking of that, you talk so much in the book about just jumping right into things. And I'm a really big believer. I've watched so many incredibly talented people in my life not do because they thought too much or because they felt like they had to have all of their ducks in a row. And you talk about just jumping straight in and figuring out all of the details later, which I absolutely love. Can you talk more about that and why that approach was really helpful when you started?
Yeah, I think it was especially helpful at the beginning, when I truly had no resources and no team. And that's kind of like the biggest barrier is at the beginning in so many ways, because if you don't start, you have absolutely nothing to go out and take from one place to the next, right? And so for me, beginning was pivotal. It was like if I didn't begin, there was absolutely nothing behind me and there was nothing in front. So I needed to create something. And it was just like, all right, let's do an inventory of your life, and what are the things that you do have. And I talk a lot about it in the book about like focusing on what you do have and not what you don't have. And that idea just essentially means be resourceful, be creative. Not everything means dollars, right? If you need a skill from somebody else and you have a skill, can you barter for that thing that you need? Can you find a way for yourself to do it? Can you do it? Do you really need like the moo business cards with a certain thickness to begin your company? Probably not. Like there's certain things that just are not as high priority in some ways, and then there's other things that you can probably just figure out and kind of like allow yourself to be scrappy about that thing. And that's what I did. So when I started H&B, as I like to call it, there were a lot of moments where my very first order, which was 40 aprons, I had no sewers. I had nothing except for a business license in California. And so I got this order of 40 aprons because I convinced the chef that I could do it. And it helped me take the leap. I told him like, hey, I can do this. Give me that order. And he gave it to me. And then I had to find somebody to help me do a pattern. I had to make a million calls to find other people that could sew. I had to, start sourcing material, which I had never done before. But I gave myself a deadline, and that really helped me take those first steps and not wait around for somebody to, come do it for me, but just simply I just got on the journey and started walking.
I love it. It's so funny when that you said moo cards. I It just brought me back to the beginning. And when you start, you really do, you want things to be what you envisioned, right?
Mhm.
And it's so hard. I just, it brought me back to all the things that I was like, man, we shouldn't have done that, or maybe we spent a little bit too much here or there.
Mhm.
But I think the important thing is, what's the Maya Angelou quote? I've learned that people will forget what you said, what you
Oh
did,
yeah,
but
but not how
they'll
you
never
feel.
forget how you made them feel. And I think
Yeah.
that's the thing to be thoughtful of in the beginning, right? It's how you make people feel. And one of the things I got from reading your book is that you just seem to have such a passion for what you were doing. And I feel like that just trumps everything else and
Yeah.
is what will get people to say yes and jump on board with you if you're truly passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think that when somebody hears that, they're like, well, what does that look like for me? It's like passion to me translated as like the first time I got that order, it felt like a fire turned on within me, and I just needed to do that again. And I really liked the feeling of being able to help someone in a way by saying like, hey, I can make you better gear, better aprons and kitchen gear than you have. Let me try this. And they said yes. And it was just like this extreme moment of enthusiasm that I felt within me. And that is what I mean by passion. And when you feel that once and you're like that moment right there, that's the one. You want to like keep finding it and keep duplicating it. That's essentially what I was doing. And so, for me, it was aprons, but it could be something else. It could be computers, it could be books, it could be, I don't know, whatever it is. People have to kind of go on an exploration to find that spark, and then it will hit them at different times, or different things happen where it's like, oh, I like that. Maybe I need to do more of that. But in the end, it wasn't like all I was doing was just that. It kind of evolved into something so much different, but it began there. And so that's another thing just to note, like when you're on a journey, where you start and where you end are sometimes very different places, and that's okay too. It's not like you have to only stick to the plan or else everything's wrong. And I think sometimes that's a failure too when people do that.
Absolutely. I don't love 5 or 10 year plans in setting timelines. And I think it's really important to have vision. But it's funny looking back, I wrote down, the 5 programs that Pound was going to have, and one of them just came out a year or two ago. And
Amazing.
that's not a failure, to me. It's just believing in timing.
Yeah.
And I also I love that you just defined passion, because I think that there are a couple things that, whether you're reading business books or listening to podcasts, passion always comes up, listening to your gut. Those are words, but how do you translate something so that somebody understands what it feels like? I think it's really cool that you define that. Another one is, what does it really feel like to listen to your gut when your gut is telling you, to do something or not to do something? Do you have kind of a definition for that? Because I feel like that comes up so many times.
Yeah, no, it's really like your instincts as a
Mm,
person. I think women in particular have really strong like emotional intelligence and the feeling. It's almost like, call it a premonition or a sort of a knowingness that something is right or wrong. And it's the feeling of knowing before it happens that something is a certain way, or you think it's a certain way. And a lot of times it's been accurate for me. And if I feel like, you know what, that relationship is not actually working the way it should, or that person's actually upset, or this is not, they're not happy, like I just get like a feeling. And it's a feeling that's just inside of you, and it can be sort of like honed in on, right? Like if you have enough experiences where you go with your gut and then it turns out it works, you're just strengthening your gut feelings
mhm.
because you
Yeah,
are
it's like a
now
muscle.
trusting it a little bit more than if you have gut feelings and you ignore them. Well, you don't have the confidence to take that leap and say, I believe me. Right? You're like, you have to actually just do it a few
Yeah,
times. So the
absolutely.
next time you get a feeling inside that something's not right or something's not wrong, and that it makes sense or it doesn't make sense, go with it and see what happens. And what's the worst that can happen? Like that you fail, fine, so you try again and something else happens. Like it's part of the journey. So that's the way I kind of think of it.
It's a muscle, and you have to, I think being an athlete is the same way. You become so in tune with your body that if something is off, the more and more you exercise it, or you
Yeah,
get to know it. And it's the same with
totally.
your gut or your intuition. You really have to pay close attention. For me, it's a feeling that I can't put my finger on. That's the only way I can
Yeah.
explain it. Um, and also, my husband and I have this sign on our wall. It's the 7 principles of manifesting, and I think the sixth one is never ignore a coincidence.
Mm,
And
love
that
that.
line has always really stood out to me, and it's made me pay way more attention to the tiny things in life that
Mm,
happen, that
I
send us
love that.
messages. Yeah.
Ooh, I want to know what the other six are now.
I'll
Like,
send
you
them
got to
to you.
send it to me. That
Yeah.
sounds awesome.
I Since we have had it up on our wall, a lot of things have happened, and I think I think in general, like you have to have reminders like that, whether you put things up on your mirrors or you have sticky notes or whatnot, like putting it in front of you is part of the process. Um, you said something about confidence. I think confidence is another muscle that we have to strengthen. And in your book, you say confidence is like a savings fund that you invest in over the years and decades. Every time I do something scary and witness myself come alive and kicking despite the shit storms along the way, uh, I'm making a deposit and my account balance grows. So I think that's the same concept, right? Of just the practice that goes into building your confidence. But I'd love for you to share um, a little bit more about that, because just like saving money, it confidence is a difficult thing for everybody.
Yeah.
I know I was scared shitless of teaching for years in the beginning of
Yeah.
Pound. And I'm sure so many of our instructors can relate to this in beginning to teach. It's you just have to do it. You have to put yourself out there and do it again and again and mess up, and that's what makes us human. But I'd love to know kind of where that concept came from.
Yeah. Well, I've I've done a lot of different wild and funny jobs and lived in a foreign country, and I just did a lot of different things when I was younger. And when I was writing the book, I was like, how do I describe what I was gaining by doing all of these unusual and different things constantly? And what was I earning on it? And I realized that what I was earning was confidence. And every time I did something that was a little bit out of my comfort zone, like move to Mexico City when I was 18, like get my Mexican citizenship and go through the extremely bureaucratic process of that. And when I would get to the end of it and I would land it, I was essentially like making a little notch on my life confidence belt. And, I one time was like, I want to run a marathon. I've never run a marathon. If I get into the New York Marathon through the raffle thing that they do, I will do it. And, what do you know? I got chosen. And out of, I don't know, it's like 100,000 people sign up and then X amount of people get in. And so I was one of those people. So I thought, well, shit, now I have to do it. And so then I went and ran the marathon. And those moments in my journey have just showed me to decide you're going to do something, maybe not have every single answer of how you're going to land it, but knowing that your creative kind of abilities and your stamina and your grit that got you through all these other things is going to help you get to the other side of this, as long as you start showing up and start practicing and trying and basically pushing in that direction. And that's just been my belief for a really long time. So that's how I describe it. The
Yeah.
confidence belt is like the life journey of showing up, doing, learning, failing, getting back up again, a little bit bloody, and continuing to walk forward.
I couldn't agree with that more. I know so many people will say that life is short, but I always say life is long. And what I mean by that, and I think you live that, is you literally can do a million different things. You can have 7 different lives. You can have different careers, because we have so many stages in our life. And I'll never forget being like 7 years old and being like, I'm gonna crawl underneath that drain pipe just because I want to see if I can do it. And
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
I think that this concept of, adding to your tool belt, but you're also adding to your life and your story,
Yeah.
and the stories that you'll be able to tell. And you're like not even halfway through. There's a picture in the book that it's like a visual representation of all the jobs that you worked when you're in Mexico. And it's something I always tell people, especially when you're young, do everything. Like, you picked up something from each of those jobs that you use today. And I don't even know you that well, and I could see it. Like there was, the performer and the salesperson, the at-home chef, like every piece of that, you gain skills that make you who you are today. And it's because you fearlessly jumped into all of those roles. Um,
Totally.
so
And by the
everybody,
way, like I didn't have any experience when showing up to them, or one of the funny jobs that I had on there was like being the lottery announcer for Mexico on television every day. And it's like, well, I had never done that before, but I had to learn how to talk in front of a bunch of people and do it in such a way that was entertaining, but I needed to do it literally every day. And so you really had to find your own little rhythm. And every time I showed up, I was, to your point, I was earning confidence, but I was also earning experience.
yep.
And there's certain things about it, like when I was a booth babe, which is essentially a job where you work at a trade show and people walk by and you kind of like pull them in to talk about whatever product you're selling. So I worked for everything from banks to bulletproof vehicle sales people. I mean, you name it, canola oil. It was like the whole gamut. The paint that you sell to make the lines on the street, on the highways, all of it.
Hey,
And
listen, you can learn how to sell something that maybe you're not super passionate about. You're going to be very
really passionate about other
good.
things. Yeah. But it was, for me at the time, in retrospect, it's like, I'm so glad I did it. But I remember being 19 and 20 and thinking, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And looking back at my friends who were in the United States, who were all going to fancy colleges and buying homes, and their parents had bought them a nice car. And then on the flip side, Ellen was in Mexico by herself, being a booth babe, selling bulletproof vehicles. Like this was not some perfect peachy journey that I, look back, and when I'm writing my memoir, it was all just so clean and thoughtful. It was very much like on a whim I made these decisions. They just happened to really work because I was learning so much along the way. But for anybody listening, they just need to know it's not some like perfectly baked path. You just have to like try, as you said, try different things, learn different things, and take opportunities for the experience, not because you're going to get paid money. I find that really young people these days are just, they're too eager to be making $100,000 and not as eager to, really actually just put in the time to learn the thing. It's not overnight. Like things take time to learn.
Yeah. It's hard to put that into perspective when you're kind of in the trenches, but it was for me, I drove my mom crazy jumping from job to job, and from music to food to fashion, I was in every industry, but it was the jobs that I kind of disliked
Yeah.
the most that I
That you
learned
learn the
the
most.
most from.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I had one job when I was working as a line cook where the sous chef was such a jerk. It's not even one of the two jobs I listed. It's like another restaurant. They were so mean and so aggressive, but they did it because they were trying to get me to be in a rhythm that I just couldn't quite get myself to. And she would walk by my station and be like, stop what you're doing. It's dirty again. And I'd be like, oh, what is she talking about? And she was just trying to like have me be disciplined about anytime I made a dish, I needed to wipe things down. And if there were like little crumbs she didn't approve. But to me, I was like, she's overthinking this. This is crazy. But
Yeah.
now I think back to that, I'm like, what a gift that she just
Yeah.
taught me to like look around and find the details and be really professional about it, no matter how big or how little the dish is that I'm making. And I'm very grateful for it. But at the time I hated her. I was like, she's so mean. And now I feel like if someone thinks somebody's mean or something's not right, they're like, well, I'll just go get a different job. And so it's just like, it's such a great opportunity to learn when you're doing something that's out of your comfort zone and you don't like it.
I was just gonna say the fear of discomfort is what is holding people back from really growing. And
Yeah.
when I was 20 years old. I was making $250 a week, and I started Pound when I was 24. And it's what puts the layers on your life. I think it's important. It's hard to replicate that, but
Yeah,
it's also important to remember that discomfort, especially when you're at an age where you're not supporting a family, or
totally.
you don't need to live in a house or whatnot. That's when you got to kind of
Yeah, you gotta like
grab
get
it.
out there and earn your stripes in life. And well, that, obviously I'm talking about like one instance where the lady was really unfriendly and not kind. And I think there's so much red tape. You can't, you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're feeling where someone's treating you badly, but also there's a difference between treating somebody badly and getting somebody to be disciplined and
Absolutely.
teaching somebody how to do something right, and not being afraid to lean in and say, hey, you're still not doing that right, you need to try again. And that like tiptoeing, it makes it like you learn not as fast. So
Yep.
it's a happy balance.
I agree. And just a side note, it's one of my favorite things about great restaurants. You know, my husband used to work at Bestia, and you'd go to dinner there and you'd watch the kitchen. And I remember saying to him, they can't have a bad day. They truly, every dish that comes out has to be good.
That's right.
And, that's why there's a team of people there to support each other, but you can't have a bad day. You have to show up if you want to be, one of the best. And
Yep.
I just think it's a really beautiful thing, and I hope that I've seen people experience food and be slightly pretentious in scenarios, and I'm also a big believer that everybody it should be a prerequisite to life that you have to work in the service industry, because
Totally.
it helps you understand what it feels like on the other side. But I'm just so appreciative every time that I go out, because it just so much goes into it, to be truly good and consistent.
Yeah, totally.
Um, so going back to kind of not necessarily the beginning, because being an entrepreneur, you're constantly told no, you're constantly on a roller coaster. There isn't really a day that goes by where there isn't some sort of pickle that you
Yeah.
have to figure out. At all of the no's that I got, or the things that didn't come to fruition, I look at them as lucky charms. They were not meant to be, but it was hard to have that perspective, being in it. Do you have any good no stories that turned out to be lucky charms?
Oh my God. I mean,
He's like, where do I
yes. I'm
start?
like, which lucky charm should I tell you about? A no that turned out to be a good. There were people early on that decided like that would work with me, and then decided, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else. And it that to me was like a no. It was a feeling of there was something that was a failure on my part, which is why
Or
they
that
were
didn't
leaving,
belong.
right?
Mhm.
And that was my perspective on it. But I realized that I later on got a coach, like a business coach, and she said to me, like, business is like a bus, and it's on a journey, and people are going to get on the bus and they're going to get off the bus, and that is part of the journey. And it needs to be not an emotional thing, but simply a no. You just need to know that this is going to happen, and how do you make it so that when people get off the bus, it's just as nice and clean as when they get on the bus.
Mhm.
And that was a really big kind of shift for me, because the next time I heard a no, it was more like the gift of opportunity to learn from them, and how do I grow and evolve. And I would say that when I first started Hedley and Bennett, all of my effort was focused on like getting the ball up the mountain, and I wasn't as aware on team members of like what they needed. And so I got a lot of no's from people where they're like, this is too hard, or it's too messy, or you don't have enough things in order, I can't do this. And then they would leave. But every no was like me falling on the ground and getting like punched in the gut. And yet like it took it took some of those to happen for me to realize that there was actually a better way. There was a better way to lead and to run an organization and to kind of manage teams and not just do it on your own. Because when you're hyper independent, you're starting this out of your house with $300 and it's like you against the world. Even when you have a team, for me, I sort of didn't realize I had a team. I just kind of kept doing it on my own. And these were constant wake up calls to me to do it differently until the like bus analogy happened. And then I was like, oh, got it. Okay. That makes sense. And so it takes time. It takes a lot of no's sometimes to really have them sink in. But that was, to me, the no that I kept hearing at the beginning and not really doing anything correctly about how to fix it until I like learned that perspective of like, oh yeah, you need a team around you and you need to take care of the team, and not just with like 401ks and things like that, but you actually have to like listen and check in and know how they're doing and look left and right as you're running up the mountain, which frankly at 25 or 24 when I started this as a $10 an hour line cook, like I had no perspective to do that. I just didn't even know what I didn't even know.
Yeah. I remember the analogy is a really beautiful one. And I think people are the hardest part of running a business, but they're the most beautiful part of running a business. And I'll never forget, I can't remember if it was a documentary, but it was on Gabrielle Hamilton, the owner of
Yeah,
Prune. And she
amazing.
said something, it was devastating to me. She said, I've worked my entire life to have a family, within the kitchen. And now that I can't be a part of it because she was the boss. And she felt that because she was the boss, she couldn't have that, intimate relationship, intimate being like close relationship
Yeah.
with her team. And I was like, and that was like maybe 5 years in, and I felt like, is that my future? Having these wonderful people around me, but not being able to really connect. And it was the moment that I started, and again, same as you, like just one no after another. I think as a leader, you feel like you have to protect people and keep certain information behind closed doors. The second I became collaborative and just opened up completely, I felt like that bond was created. And it was through a lot of no's and hearing, people's feedback that came to fruition. And kind of on the same note, but a little bit different. You talk a lot about collaboration in the book, and we kind of preach to our pound instructors, which we call pound pros, to collaborate. It's so hard, specifically like when you're in the same industry, to to collaborate with other people, because you might think, oh, they're going to take business away from me, or if I have this one instructor come and teach, like what if my students want to go there? I'm a big believer that the more we come together, the more we just grow in general. And
Absolutely.
you've had some awesome collabs, Madewell, Vans, Hundreds, like some of my favorite brands. What role does collaboration play in your life and in your business?
Such a good question. I think that I, from the outside looking, like working with customers and like people along the way, collaboration was very easy for me. It was like, okay, that's a chef. I'm a cook. I want to know what's right and what's wrong with the gear that you're wearing. In this case, aprons. Tell me everything that works. Tell me everything that doesn't work. And being able to listen and really listen and then adapt based on what I was learning. That was how I started collaborating. And then it became like, okay, if we're outfitting so many different chefs and doing all this stuff, what can we do? What can we do with other brands now, and like learn from them and have them learn from us, and kind of share communities and expand our reach and talk to different people that we've never talked to. And that's how Vans and Madewell and Parachute Home and Topo Designs and all these collaborations we did kind of came to life. And it was more on the like collaboration internally that I was so busy working on the outside collaboration that I hadn't quite figured out how to collaborate internally in the most effective way. And so that's something that, I would say during COVID and post COVID, and even right before COVID too, it's just been a huge focus of mine, is like, how do you get your entire team to all run in the same direction? And for the longest time, I didn't have time to even focus on that, because it was like, can you make rent? Can you pay these bills? Can you, right? There was like a lot. And then the company got enough traction where it was like, okay, I feel like it's not only necessary that I do this, it's the time I need to do this. So I've just been honing collaboration skills and learning from my team as well on this.
Yeah, this year, or this past year, has been such a gift in that way. I think in general, it slowed people down enough to take the time to recognize the work that needs to be done in their foundation, right? So
Yep.
personally, what am I doing with my life? What matters? What have I not been doing in my life that matters? And in business, although our team has been working from home, I felt like we've connected in the bond that's formed because we've all collectively come together in so many ways. It's been a really really beautiful lesson to learn. And even like I stepped away when I had my son, and just seeing my team, you're like, I can't leave. I like don't want to step away. But like watching your team just kick ass there's just nothing better than that. Let's switch gears for a quick second and talk about food.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, let me ask you this first. Do you have do you know what your first memory of food is?
I think it had something. I feel like it was in Mexico, because that's like my earliest memories of food were like tortillas and cheese and queso fresco, which is this fresh cheese you get at the essentially the Mexican farmers market, and they give it to you in a wrapped banana leaf, and all of the juice from the cheese is literally like leaking out the sides. Like it's so fresh that it's just oozing juice, like almost like clear liquid, like very like watery. And it when you buy feta cheese and it comes in like a little container with some liquid in it, that it just that moist. And I remember that vividly, and it was like salty and creamy all at the same time, and just crumbled in your fingers as you put it over the beans. And it was such a simple dish, but it represented so much. It was like it was nourishing, nurturing, all at the same time, delicious, beautiful, simple. Rich people, poor people, everybody ate it. It kind of was like a universal food. And that is what I remember early on, of just being like, wow, food is awesome, and I love how it tastes. I want more.
Yeah. It's literally one of my favorite things. And it's funny, my son just started eating solid foods, and I've been pureeing vegetables and fruit for him. And it's so crazy. First of all, you'll experience this. You're like, why don't I have any memories before I was like 2? Because this looks like so much fun. But also I'm like pureeing carrots, and I'm trying them, and I'm like, this is so good. And it's just carrots. Like
Totally.
food in its like purest form is just so amazing.
Delicious.
Brought me back to my appreciation for it.
I love that.
And I'm really excited to experience food through him again, because
yeah, that's true. You get to kind of relive all of it.
Yeah, I was like the pickiest eater when I was a kid, and this kid like just eats anything you give him, so it's gonna be a fun one. Speaking of kids, you you just announced that your husband Casey and you will welcome a child into this awesome, crazy world. How are you feeling about it?
It's definitely like a new it's such a dream first, details later thing to have a
Good.
child, right? You're just like, cool, I have no idea how I'm going to do this, what I'm doing or anything, but I'm going to get on the journey anyway. So that's kind of how it feels, but I'm extremely excited about it. And I'm 33, and I think for a long time I was like, can I have a kid while I'm running a business? Is that possible? Should you do that? And I just kind of, it dawned on me like, man, if we can survive COVID and keep a business rolling and growing and changing and evolving, you can have a kid and have a business too. That's not, and that was just, I don't know if that's like everyone felt that way, but it just kind of hit me, especially post COVID. Like there's there's ways to do more than just work in life, and you can have other things and do other things and be happy and excited about it and not feel like, if you don't spend 999 hours a day working on your business, it's not gonna work anymore. And so that's just like a big growing up journey for me. And I mean, I am 9 years into my company, and I have an amazing team,
Yeah.
and they help do so much. And so I'm no longer just running up the mountain alone. And that's kind of like the next chapter. Is there's also parts of this that I'm letting go so that they can do even better by me not poking into everything all the time.
Yeah, I lived that over the course of the last year, and I couldn't agree more. And I think same. Our company's 10 years old, and I would say, like, if I tried to have a kid, year one, two, three, it would have been a little bit of a shit show. But
Yeah.
you've worked so hard to build a foundation, and you are going to bring this child into the world, and they're going to experience you as an entrepreneur. That was one of my favorite memories as a kid. Both of my parents were entrepreneurs. My dad's office was in my bedroom. Like, they're going to see something so inspiring, which is awesome. And yeah, your priorities will shift, and they'll inspire you to do things differently. And I think it's awesome. I'm excited for you guys.
Thank you. I'm really excited too. And I actually think that some of my smartest friends that have kids, they said they learned so much from their children and
Yeah.
gained so much empathy and
Yep.
learned so many things about how to manage people in general. I'm super excited to learn that next journey, and like, how do I learn from a little kid
Yeah.
and bring that joy even further, in my own like life and how I
That
do things.
that word has that has been the word for me, joy. Watching my son just like take in the world literally with the most purest joy. It's like it's a word that even before him I wanted to feel in my life more.
Mhm.
Yeah, that they'll bring that for sure. It's
I'm so excited.
pretty special. Okay, so before we depart each other, I would love if you could give our listeners just a few tips on the start game. I think so many people around the world are starting over because they want to, because they have to.
Yep.
Um, and also, a lot of our instructors teach Pound as their first group fitness class. Like, they, took classes and they want to return the favor, if you will, and inspire
Mhm.
others to do the same. And it's their first time doing it. So, what advice would you give our community?
I would say, one, just start trying, get on the journey, and like start learning from doing, not learning from
Mm.
thinking. You want to learn from the doing, not the thinking. The thinking is good, it's important, but it can't be everything. And you'll find once you do a lot of doing, you'll need to think more, right? It's like you build something and then you got to look at it and be like, okay, how do I get this thing that I built from here to the next place? And that's when you can apply thinking. But at the beginning, just start showing up and don't be afraid to not be great at something, and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that will mean being in a room with a bunch of other people that are much better than you, and you still show up the next day. That is being uncomfortable. It is taking a job that's less than what you wanted to make because you're going to learn something from them. That is being uncomfortable. There's so many ways to just be uncomfortable and learn. And that is important, especially towards the beginning of it. And don't expect everything to be peachy and roses. There's a saying in the book that's like, they're not bumps in the road, they are the road. And it's the idea that you're going to hit bumps and failures and successes and challenges along the journey. And if you don't, I don't know what kind of a journey you're on, because that's not a journey. That's like you're
Not a
sitting in
fun
a
one.
bathtub somewhere, right? Like that's not an adventure. So just know that that is part of it. And when you are experiencing that, you're not failing. You're simply on the right path, which includes pitfalls. And you got to get your butt back up and then try something else. And I'd say lastly, my kind of definition of a no is not a no. It's like, it's a pivot to a left or a right instead of straight. And when you hear a no, don't stop, just instead reroute and find a different way, find a different direction, and then keep moving forward, but always with this forward inertia.
I'm with you. The moment that I said to myself, Kirsten, if you keep freaking out every time something bad happens, like you're just not going to enjoy life. And that is life. Like as we get older, there's taxes, there's deaths, there's celebration, there's parking tickets. Like it's never going to end. So the more, grace that you can find with every bump,
Yep.
the more you're going to enjoy it, and learn from the doing. That's, I think, the big message. Put that on a post-it and post it on your mirror.
Yeah, I love that.
All right, last question, because you just wrote a book. Number one all-time favorite book in the entire world, does not have to be a business book, and your most current read.
Very good questions. Okay. The book I'm well, does it count? I'm like picking it up to show you the type. Can it count if I'm still in the middle of it?
Absolutely.
Okay. It's called Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yes. Good one.
Hero. I love his books. They're amazing. It's like long and windy and so good. So I'm reading that right now. My favorite book of all time. I don't remember the name, but yet it's the first book I remember kind of absorbing as a little kid. And it's like a story. It's a storybook about a mom and her little boy. I'm literally going to cry as I describe it to you. It's such a good book. It's a mom and her little boy, and how when the little boy is little, she carries him. And then the end of the end of the book.
I Love You Forever is the name.
Yes, that one. I Love You Forever. Oh, literally, I tears in my eyes as I tell you about that book. Is just so deep. I don't even know why or how, but it's just like the story of life.
Yeah, because
laid out so beautifully.
Yeah.
Yep. That one.
Our parents took care of us, and we'll take care of them. And yeah, I stopped reading that book because I cried every time.
Every time. I'm not even reading it right now. I have like tears in my eyes. That book is so beautiful. I love it so much. Yeah.
Oh, I love that you chose that. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I know our community is going to just dig this conversation, and there's so many nuggets to take away. And thank you. And everybody, will share this information, but go out and get Dream First, Details Later. I love this book because it is equally a good read as it is visually pleasing, which cannot be said for most books. Also, I found it to be not to poo-poo on other business books, but sometimes when I get halfway through, I'm like, okay, this is a repeat of chapter one, but every chapter that I've read so far is fresh, and I've taken something, and it doesn't just have to be about business, which I love.
Oh,
So
thank
thank
you.
you
That's well,
again.
that is exactly why and how I wrote the book. I wanted it to be colorful and vivid. And it's I think it's one of the very first business books that Penguin Random House has actually had color on the inside of it. And
Oh
I'm
my
like, business is not black and white. Why the hell are all the business books black
God.
and white?
Yeah.
So it's packed with infographics and designed to highlight the journey, but also if you want to read it from front to back, you can. But if you want to just flip to the chapter on how to do a collaboration
Yep.
and how to land something or how to talk to people about a product that you're selling,
Yep.
you can talk about it too. But to your point, it's not specific to business, it's simply specific to trying. It's the attitude that I'm really trying to give to people, how to just show up and start trying.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Also, there's a bolt on the front, which is our brand symbol. So
Yay.
very
Love
aligned. Thank
that.
you so much.
Oh,
Where can everybody find you, the book, Hedley and Bennett,
yes,
all the stuff?
definitely. So you can find us at Ellen Marie Bennett on Instagram, Hedley and Bennett on Instagram and TikTok. Our TikTok is highly entertaining, so I definitely recommend it. And we also, of course, our website, hedleyandbennett.com. If you want a signed copy of the book, we have them on our website. And if you want any sort of beautiful aprons and kitchen gear that used to be for professional chefs, but now we outfit people at home,
Yeah.
go check out hedleyandbennett.com. And thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.
Thank you.